To Sir with Love taught us about compassion and growth inside a chaotic classroom. But behind the scenes was a tragedy no one ever saw coming. Almost the entire cast met heartbreaking ends, from sudden accidents and devastating illnesses to long, isolating years of loneliness. Today, let's revisit their stories and honor the people who quietly brought this masterpiece to life. Sidney Poitier as Mark Thackeray. Sidney Poitier was born on February 20th, 1927, in Miami, Florida. At 40 years old, he played Mark Thackeray, the unemployed engineer who becomes a teacher confronting rebellious students, in To Sir with Love, 1967. That performance became a defining moment in his career, marking the rise of a screen presence both commanding and deeply human. However, behind that calm strength, Poitier's personal life was far more turbulent. His first marriage to Juanita Hardy unraveled slowly, worn down by constant travel, long periods apart, and the 9-year affair he entered into with actress Diane Carroll. The break left deep emotional scars within the family he shared with 4 daughters, and even as he filmed Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And in the heat of the night, the strain followed him onto every set. Instead of easing, the pressure compounded, pushing him to carry both the expectations of a groundbreaking black actor and the weight of his own private mistakes. As he moved into his second marriage with Joanna Shimkus, life grew steadier, but not easier. The responsibilities of raising 2 more daughters, navigating fame that never relented, and maintaining control over a historic career slowly wore him down. In time, Alzheimer's disease took hold, eroding the sharpness, discipline, and dignity that had defined him. Sadly, Sidney Poitier died on January 6, 2022, at his home in Beverly Hills at age 94, with cardiopulmonary failure as the immediate cause and Alzheimer's disease and prostate cancer contributing. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at $20 million, built from landmark roles and California real estate that reflected a lifetime of persistence and principle. Patricia Routledge as Grace. Patricia Routledge was born on February 17, 1929, in Birkenhead, England. At 38 years old, she played Grace, the warm, witty, supporting teacher who brought balance to a harsh classroom environment, in To Sir with Love, 1967. The part revealed a quiet brilliance and impeccable timing that later made her one of Britain's most beloved comedic performers. But while her talent flourished, her romantic life unfolded with much more difficulty. In her late 20s, she entered an affair with a married man, a choice that left her emotionally shaken and wary of long-term commitment. Years later, another relationship, this time with a theater director she admired, ended abruptly, leaving her with a lingering sense of loss. As her fame grew through Keeping Up Appearances and Hetty Wainthropp Investigates, the solitude in her private life only deepened. She battled periods of depression during these busy years, facing the harsh reality that success had come at the cost of companionship and family. With time, Routledge turned her focus fully toward her craft, her close friendships, and the charitable causes she supported. Her life in Chichester brought stability, yet the absence of a lasting partner remained a quiet ache beneath the surface, especially as she stepped back from acting. Sadly, Patricia Routledge died on October 3, 2025, at Wellington Grange Care Home in Chichester, aged 96. Her funeral at Chichester Cathedral on November 5th honored her extraordinary range and the deep affection audiences held for her. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at $2.5 million, accumulated from decades of television work and carefully managed property investments. Jeffrey Bayldon as Theo Weston. Jeffrey Bayldon was born on January 7, 1924, in Leeds, England. At 43 years old, he played Theo Weston, the conservative, rigid colleague who stood in sharp contrast to Mark Thackeray's progressive approach. In To Sir with Love, 1967, the role revealed a subtle precision in his acting, adding depth to a film already rich with emotional conflict. Yet behind that controlled performance was a life shaped by hardship and complicated love. After serving in the Royal Air Force during World War II and suffering a minor injury, Bayldon carried with him the lingering stress of wartime trauma. His long-running partnership with actor Alan Rowe became the emotional anchor of his adult life, but Rowe's death from cancer in 2000 shattered him. The loss left Bayldon withdrawn and deeply shaken, and although he continued appearing in beloved roles like Catweasel and Wurzel Gummidge, the grief never loosened its grip. Instead, he faced his later career while navigating the loneliness that followed Rowe's passing. As the years moved on, Bayldon's isolation grew heavier. He had never married, and Rowe's absence created a permanent emotional void. Later, his regret over turning down the original role of the Doctor in Doctor Who became another quiet weight he carried, a reminder of a chance he feared would define him as an old oddity. With time, his health began to falter, and respiratory difficulties slowly reduced the energy that had once fueled his long stage and television career. Sadly, Geoffrey Bayldon died on May 10, 2017, in Leeds at the age of 93 from respiratory complications. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at £1 million, earned through decades on stage, television, and the enduring legacy of his most iconic roles. Susie Kendall as Gillian Blanchard. Susie Kendall, born Frida Harriet Harrison, was born on January 1, 1937, in Belper, England. At 30 years old, she played Gillian Blanchard, the young, empathetic teacher who supports Mark Thackeray with quiet understanding. In To Sir with Love, 1967, her gentle presence and natural elegance helped define the film's softer emotional moments. Away from the screen, however, Kendall's life unfolded with far more turbulence. Her early marriage to actor Roy Holder became strained as her career accelerated, and the pressures of constant travel across Europe for film work slowly pushed the relationship toward its 1973 end, the shift into Italian giallo cinema, including The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, brought success, but also exploitation. She often felt reduced to a marketable image rather than respected for her skill, and the grueling schedules left her physically and emotionally exhausted. That exhaustion became one of the key reasons she stepped back from Hollywood earlier than most expected. When she married musician Sandy Harper in 1978, her life finally began to regain balance. The arrival of their daughter, Elodie Harper, offered her a grounding she had long missed, and the household stability softened the lingering insecurities of her younger years. She chose peace over pressure, a decision that ultimately shaped the calm rhythm of her later life. Today, Susie Kendall is 88 years old and enjoying a quiet retirement in London beside her family. Though no longer active in film, she remains fondly remembered for her early work and the grace she brought to 1960s cinema. Her estimated net worth is around $1 million, accumulated from her film career, modeling years, and careful financial management in retirement. Christian Roberts as Bert Denham. Christian Roberts, born Christian Charles Roberts, was born on March 17, 1944, in Southmore, England. At 23 years old, he played Bert Denham, the rebellious student who slowly transforms from defiance to respect. In To Sir with Love, 1967, the role became an explosive debut, instantly establishing him as one of the most promising young faces of British cinema. But away from the screen, Roberts's life quickly became entangled in emotional turmoil. His early relationships with actresses Judy Geeson and Susie Kendall ignited headlines and created tension within the industry, eventually contributing to the breakdown of his first marriage. Not only that, his film opportunities faded, his frustrations grew deeper, leading him back toward the theater world that first shaped him. Over time, new pressures emerged. Roberts attempted to reinvent himself as a theater director and later joined his family's business, Yet financial misfortune struck more than once. Two separate bankruptcies left him battling long-term economic strain, and the stress followed him even after he retreated to Barbados to run the Lone Star restaurant. Meanwhile, prostate cancer advanced silently, turning his final years into a difficult fight marked by pain and declining strength. Sadly, Christian Roberts died on December 26, 2022, at the age of 78 from cancer. He passed away surrounded by his family, including the children from his first marriage, after decades of highs, lows, and relentless attempts to rebuild. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $500,000, reflecting a life shaped by theater, film, and the restaurant venture that carried him through his final chapter. Judy Geeson as Pamela Dare. Judy Geeson was born on September 10, 1948, in Arundel, England. At 18 years old, she played Pamela Dare, the bright, emotionally complex student whose connection with her teacher reveals a journey from curiosity to maturity in To Sir with Love, 1967. Her performance instantly distinguished her as a young actress with depth far beyond her years. Yet despite her early rise, Geeson's personal life unfolded in painful waves. In the early 1970s, she lived with set designer Sean Kenny, whose sudden death from cancer in 1973 devastated her. The loss marked her profoundly, and the grief shadowed much of her work that followed. Her later marriage to actor Christopher Tabori brought a brief period of stability, but the relationship ended in 1989, leaving her without children and navigating a career that often demanded solitude more than support. As she tried to re-establish herself in Hollywood, Geeson encountered new barriers: visa complications, cultural bias against British actresses, and a pattern of being overlooked for leading roles wore her down throughout the 1980s. The relentless workload led to exhaustion, forcing her to slow down and step away from acting for nearly a decade. Although she eventually rebuilt her career in American television, notably in Mad About You and later in Gilmore Girls, the emotional toll of earlier losses and constant reinvention lingered beneath her professional success. Today, Judy Geeson is 77 years old and living in Los Angeles, continuing to take selective roles while maintaining a quieter pace of life. She remains admired for the honesty and vulnerability she brings to her characters, qualities forged through both triumph and heartbreak. Her estimated net worth of $3 million reflects decades of work across British film, American television, and the enduring legacy of her most iconic performances. Faith Brook as Grace Evans. Faith Brook was born on February 16, 1922, in York, England. At 45 years old, she played Grace Evans, the traditional soft-spoken teacher representing the older generation, in To Sir with Love, 1967. Her composed presence and refined delivery added an essential balance to the film's emotional rhythm. Despite her elegance on screen, Brook's personal life was marked by deep strain and quiet grief. After building an early career beside her father, actor Clive Brook, she found her momentum disrupted by World War II. Serving in Britain's Auxiliary Territorial Service left her exhausted as she struggled to balance acting with intelligence duties. Her marriage to Dr. Charles Moffat in 1949 brought a brief period of stability, but their eventual divorce left her raising their son amid an already demanding career. A second marriage to Michael Horowitz also ended, and she carried the emotional weight of two fractured unions while continuing to work tirelessly. As the years passed, Brook poured herself into television and theater. She continued performing with grace, including acclaimed roles in War and Peace and The 39 Steps. The emotional cost of personal loss lingered beneath every achievement, shaping a life defined as much by devotion as by heartbreak. Sadly, Faith Brook died on March 11, 2012, in London at the age of 90, passing peacefully after age-related decline. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $800,000, largely accumulated through decades on the British stage and television. Anne Bell as Mrs. Dare. Anne Bell, born Anne Forrest Bell, was born on April 29, 1938, in London, England. At 29 years old, she played Mrs. Dare, the worried, protective mother of Pamela, in To Sir, with Love, 1967. Her grounded, heartfelt delivery added emotional realism to the film's portrayal of working-class families. Behind her composed screen presence, Belle's real life was shaped by periods of severe professional uncertainty. Her rise in the early 1960s, including a leading role in Jane Eyre, was soon followed by a difficult decade in the 1970s when substantial roles for women became scarce. Financial pressure mounted as she navigated long stretches without work, and the strain pushed her close to leaving acting entirely. During this difficult period, she turned to writing about performance as a way to stay connected to her craft and regain confidence. Her marriage to actor Robert Lang in 1971 finally brought emotional stability, though not without challenges. Balancing two acting careers while raising their two children created constant tension at home, especially as Belle struggled with the unpredictability of her workload. Lang's death in 2004 was a devastating turning point, leaving her to rebuild her life alone while holding on to the last projects they had shared. Now Anne Bell is 87 years old and still living in England, occasionally returning to acting while maintaining a private, peaceful routine. Her net worth is estimated at around $1 million, earned from decades of work in British television and theater. Lulu, as Barbara Pegg. Lulu, born Marie MacDonald McLaughlin Laurie, was born on November 3, 1948, in Lennoxtown, Scotland. At 19 years old, she played Barbara Pegg, the playful, spirited student whose energy lit up the classroom, in To Sir, with Love, 1967. Her performance, paired with the title song she recorded, instantly turned her into an international sensation. But beneath the vibrant voice and youthful confidence, Lulu faced emotional wounds that fame could never soften. Her marriage to Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, though passionate at first, quickly grew strained as two rising stars struggled to hold together a relationship overshadowed by touring, pressures from the music industry, and their own inexperience. The breakup left her shaken, and though she later found stability with celebrity hairdresser John Frieda, that union too eventually fell apart. After their divorce in 1992, Lulu openly admitted that the heartbreak of two failed marriages plunged her into periods of depression, leaving her wary of seeking love again. Despite the turmoil, Lulu continued to reinvent herself. While raising her son, Jordan, she navigated a demanding career that swung between explosive success and disorienting silence. The shift from 1960s pop star to 1970s entertainer forced her to work harder than ever. Recording, touring, hosting shows, then rebuilding again in the 1990s with the album Independence and the hit collaboration Relight My Fire. The emotional toll of personal losses and constant reinvention shaped her into an artist who often used music for survival. Today, Lulu is 77 years old and still performing, her voice steady and her stage presence unmistakable. With an estimated net worth of $30 million, she stands as one of the few artists whose career has endured across 6 decades, carried by resilience forged through fame, heartbreak, and the determination to keep singing Adrienne Posta as Moira Joseph. Adrienne Posta, born Adrienne Luann Poster, was born on March 1, 1949, in London, England. At 18 years old, she played Moira Joseph, the lively, fast-talking student whose spark brought youthful energy to the classroom, in To Sir, with Love, 1967. The role marked her first major step into a career that blended both acting and music. But behind that bright performance, Posta's real life soon unfolded with far more tension than her cheerful screen persona suggested. Her quick rise in late 1960s British cinema brought fame, but also intense pressure. Her marriage to singer Graham Bonnet collapsed under the pace of their growing careers, leaving her navigating the public eye alone at a young age. The breakup left emotional bruises that followed her into her second marriage, which also eventually ended. Through the early 1970s, she found herself working relentlessly, acting in Up the Junction, appearing in Carry On Behind, recording singles, and performing on television, yet feeling increasingly disconnected from the image the industry demanded. As the music landscape changed, the expectations placed on young female performers grew harsher. Posta struggled with the transition, watching the style of pop she loved fade from mainstream demand. By the late 1970s, the emotional and physical strain of constant reinvention pushed her close to burnout. Stepping back from the spotlight became less of a choice and more of a necessity, and teaching offered her the stability and purpose. Guiding young performers at the Italia Conti Academy and in the Midlands allowed her to reconnect with the craft without the pressure of fame. Now, Adrienne Posta is 76 years old, semi-retired, and continuing to teach part-time. She lives a quieter life, far removed from the frenzy of her early career, but still connected to the performing arts through her students and her role as a patron of the Music Hall Guild. Her estimated net worth is around $500,000, reflecting decades spent in film, television, music, and education. Lynn Sue Moon as Miss Wong. Lynn Sue Moon was born on May 2, 1949, in Islington, England. At 18 years old, she played Miss Wong, the soft-spoken, multicultural student who brought a fresh, gentle presence to the classroom, in To Sir with Love, 1967. Her performance added a quiet warmth to the ensemble, marking her final appearance before stepping away from acting entirely. Despite her early success, Moon's real life took a completely different path from most child actors of her generation. After beginning with 55 Days at Peking in 1963, where she played the orphan protected by Charlton Heston, she quickly became known for her delicate screen presence. But the pressure of growing up in the industry, combined with constant expectations placed on Asian mixed actresses during the 1960s, left her emotionally drained. By the mid-1960s, she quietly withdrew from auditions, choosing privacy over a career that had started to feel overwhelming. As the film roles faded, Moon chose not to chase stardom or return to the relentless cycle of casting calls. Instead, she built a small, quiet life far from the public eye. Her decision to leave entertainment early allowed her to avoid the burnout, loneliness, and instability that often accompany early fame. Today, Lynn Sue Moon is 76 years old and living a calm, private life. She has no children and no public presence, choosing a quiet existence after leaving the spotlight more than half a century ago. Her estimated net worth is around $1.1 million, accumulated from early film earnings and a lifetime of careful financial independence. Christopher Chittell as Potter. Christopher John Chittell was born on May 19, 1948, in Aldershot, England. At 19 years old, he played Potter, the rebellious, sharp-tongued student who added tension and realism to the classroom dynamic, in To Sir with Love, 1967. Though it was a small role, it marked the beginning of a remarkably long and unpredictable career. As his life moved into adulthood, Chittell faced emotional strain behind the scenes. His marriage to Caroline Hunt, beginning in 1979, gradually fractured under the weight of financial stress and his demanding work schedule. The pressure intensified when his career stagnated in the early 1980s, pushing him into theater work that paid little and forced him to travel constantly. This instability affected the marriage deeply and eventually led to their 2005 divorce, leaving Chittell emotionally drained as he tried to raise 2 children while rebuilding his momentum. With time, he found stability again, but not without scars. His second marriage to actress Leslie Dunlop eventually provided comfort, yet he still carried decades of exhaustion from portraying Eric Pollard on Emmerdale, a role he had taken in 1986. The non-stop filming schedule spanning nearly 40 years left him burnt out at times, battling fatigue and the lingering emotional weight of his past marital difficulties. Despite these private battles, he continued working, knowing that stepping away would risk financial uncertainty all over again. Now, Christopher Chittell is 77 years old and remains a central figure on Emmerdale, holding the record as the show's longest-serving cast member. His estimated net worth of $3 million comes largely from his steady annual salary and the endurance required to maintain such a demanding role for so many decades. Michael DeBar as Williams. Michael Philip DeBars was born on January 24, 1948, in London, England. At 19 years old, he appeared as Williams, the mysterious student in dark sunglasses whose swagger and unpredictability added color to Sir with Love, 1967. It was his first credited film role, marking the starting point of a career that would twist through music, television, and reinvention. His personal life, however, was far less glamorous than the rock and roll image he projected. His first marriage to Wendy Hamilton crumbled quickly as DeBars became increasingly consumed by music, touring, and nightlife. When he later married Pamela DeBars in 1977, the relationship brought passion, but also chaos. His growing addiction issues, the pressures of fame, and long absences on the road caused deep emotional strain, eventually eroding their marriage. The collapse of his family life left him unstable for years. By the early 1980s, he confronted the fallout of those choices: loneliness, the guilt of missing time with his son, and the damage that addiction had done to his health. When he finally became sober in June 1981, he rebuilt slowly, but the scars of the past remained. His later relationship with Britta Hayertz helped him recover from decades of turmoil and create a stable home after years of emotional turbulence. Now, Michael DeBars is 77 years old and remains active as a musician, performer, and beloved radio host on Sirius XM's Underground Garage. His estimated net worth of $2 million reflects a lifetime of reinvention, from glam rock frontman to actor to cultural icon, shaped equally by success and by the personal battles he fought Joseph Cuby as Sapiano. Joseph Cuby was born on August 25, 1944, in Gibraltar. At 22 years old, he played Sapiano, the sharp, mischievous student whose humor cut through the tension of the classroom, in To Sir with Love, 1967. His natural wit and grounded presence gave the film one of its most memorable supporting students. To gain this role, Cuby faced emotional strain that tested both his confidence and personal relationships. His marriage to Brenda, beginning in the early 1970s, came during a period when he struggled to secure steady acting roles, and the pressure of financial instability weighed heavily on the couple, with opportunities shrinking and the constant uncertainty of the entertainment world. The stress spilled into their home life, pushing him to step away from acting entirely in search of something more stable and predictable. As he transitioned into a quieter, more private career path, the emotional toll of those early struggles lingered. Raising 3 children, Joshua, Sam, and a daughter born in 2000, brought both responsibility and grounding, but it also forced him to confront the compromises he had made. The weight of feeling that his dreams had slipped away created its own form of silent exhaustion while trying to rebuild a peaceful family life. Now, Joseph Cuby is 81 years old and living quietly in Gibraltar after many years in Essex. He has long retired from acting, choosing a life far removed from the stresses that once consumed him. His estimated net worth of around $1 million comes from careful savings, small business ventures, and residual earnings. So that's all for today's video. Which story shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable cast updates. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.